The town of Harlan's Crossing, Montana, had made up its mind about Nell Voss a long time ago. Not in a single moment, not through any one conversation, but in the slow, accumulating way that small towns form their verdicts through 100 sideways glances and a dozen careful silences, and the particular tone people use when they are saying something polite that means something else entirely. It had started when she was 14 and corrected the schoolteacher's arithmetic in front of the class. Not to be cruel. Because the number was wrong, and a wrong number in a ledger meant a family shorted on supplies, and Nell had understood that even at 14 in a way that the schoolteacher, who was 26 and had gone to a college back east, apparently did not. The schoolteacher had not thanked her. The class had gone quiet in the specific way that rooms go quiet when something has happened that no one knows how to categorize. By the time she was 22, Nell Voss was running the Western Union telegraph office in Harlan's Crossing entirely by herself. She had the fastest hands on the key between Billings and the Idaho border, a fact that the regional superintendent had noted in his quarterly report with the reluctant precision of a man recording something he finds inconvenient. She had taught herself electrical repair from a manual she had written away to Chicago for because the company sent a technician once a year and the equipment did not confine its failures to that schedule. She had, in her 3 years at the office, prevented 2 freight collisions, rerouted a derailed shipment of medical supplies to a town that needed them badly, and personally talked a panicked railroad agent in Bozeman through a switching crisis at 2 in the morning via telegraph, because there was no one else available who knew the system well enough to help. Harlan's Crossing knew all of this. It also thought she was too much, too sharp, they said, when what they meant was that she made them feel slow. Too certain, when what they meant was that she did not perform uncertainty for the comfort of people who preferred women to seem unsure. Too independent, which was the one that carried the most weight, because independent women in 1,884 inches, a railroad town in Montana, were a specific kind of problem, the kind that couldn't be easily placed in the available categories, and things that couldn't be placed in the available categories made people uncomfortable in ways they expressed as criticism. She was 29 years old, and she was not, by the measurements Harlan's Crossing applied to women her age, where she was supposed to be. She was supposed to be married. She was supposed to have softened by now, the way people expected capable women to eventually soften, like a horse that has been properly gentled. She had not softened. She had gotten better at her job, which was a different direction entirely. There had been one engagement. His name was Douglas Partridge, and he had come from a good family in Helena, and he had seemed, in the beginning, like a man who appreciated her. He had told her, in the early months, that he found her mind remarkable. He had told her, closer to the end, that he needed a wife who would be a credit to his position, and that her habit of arguing with men who outranked her professionally was going to be a problem he couldn't afford. She had given him back the ring on a Tuesday afternoon with the calm efficiency of someone completing a transaction, and he had left Harlan's Crossing by Thursday, and the town had formed its opinion about whose fault it was, and the opinion had not been Douglas Partridge's. Nell had her own opinion, which was that Douglas had wanted an audience, not a partner, and that the distinction mattered, and that she was not willing to spend her life being someone's audience. The town found this attitude unsurprising and unfortunate and frankly a little sad, though they did not say sad. They said she had very high standards, which was how Harlan's Crossing said the same thing more gently. She was not, if she let herself be honest in the quiet of the telegraph office in the late evenings, when the last transmission had gone out, and the instruments sat silent on the desk, and the Montana dark settled in around the building. Like a cold hand, she was not entirely at ease with where she had landed. There was something she had not found. She knew its shape. She had stopped expecting to find it in Harlan's Crossing, which had shown her most of what it intended to offer. She would later understand that she had been wrong about that. Reeve Callender arrived on the 11:40 from Billings on a Tuesday in September. He was a railroad surveyor, 37 years old, and he had come to Harlan's Crossing because the Continental Railroad's Western Expansion Committee had decided to run a new spur line through the territory, and someone had to assess the ground first. That someone was Reeve, who had been doing this work for 11 years across 4 territories, and who approached the land the way he approached everything, as a problem that rewarded careful looking and punished assumptions. He came to the telegraph office his first afternoon in town because a surveyor in the field needs a reliable telegraph line, the way a ship needs a compass, and because he had learned over 11 years that the best thing you could do in a new town was find the person who actually ran the communications and establish a professional relationship before you needed one badly. He pushed open the door of the Western Union office at 2:30. Nell was at the key. Not idle, not waiting working. Her attention on the instrument with the focused quality of someone who has long since stopped being self-conscious about what they look like when they concentrate. She held up one finger without looking up. He stopped. He waited. 40 seconds later, she completed the transmission, noted something in her log, and looked up. She had light brown hair pinned back with the practical efficiency of someone who pins their hair to keep it out of their face rather than to make any kind of statement about it. Gray eyes, clear and direct, and assessing in the unself-conscious way of someone who has spent years reading information quickly and acting on it. A dark wool jacket over a white shirtwaist, ink on her right hand. "Can I help you?" she said. It was not quite a question. It was the tone of someone whose time has value and who extends it as a professional courtesy rather than an obligation. "Reeve Calendar," he said. "Survey contractor for Continental Railroad. I'll be in the territory 6 weeks, maybe 8. I need reliable wire access and I need to know who I'm working with." She looked at him with the measuring attention of someone who is evaluating not just what is being said, but the person saying it. "Nell Voss," she said. "I'm the operator and the technician and generally speaking the office. Transmissions go out on the hour and the half hour unless there's volume, in which case they go out when they go out. Priority traffic moves immediately. What counts as priority is my determination, not the sender's." He looked at her. "Fair," he said. She seemed very slightly surprised by that. One small adjustment in her expression, quickly corrected. "Rates are posted on the board," she said. "Survey traffic is standard commercial. If you need a dedicated morning window, put in the request by 8 the night before." "Understood," he said. "And if I need something moved urgently outside the window?" "Come in person," she said. "Don't send a runner. Runners get the details wrong." He nodded once, with the manner of someone filing information for actual use rather than just acknowledging it politely. "You've been here long?" he said. 3 years, she said. "Before that, Missoula. Before that, I was at the Billings office." "You trained in Billings?" "I trained myself," she said. "Billings is where I started." He looked at her for a moment with amber eyes that had the particular quality of attention that belongs to people who do precise work, the kind of looking that is actually seeing. "Good to know," he said. "I'll send the morning request tonight." He left. Nell went back to her instruments, but she was aware, in the specific way you are aware of something you are not yet ready to examine, that the conversation had been different from the ones she usually had with men who came through that door. She couldn't have said exactly how. She went back to work. He sent the morning request at 7:45 that night. The handwriting was clear and specific and entirely free of the loose approximations that most people used when they thought precision was someone else's job. He came back Wednesday. He had a legitimate reason 3 transmissions for the survey team, but he came in person rather than sending the messages with the hotel boy, which was what most people did. She processed the transmissions without comment. He watched her work with the open, unapologetic attention of someone who is genuinely interested in how a thing is done. "You read the responses faster than I would have thought," he said, when she had finished. "Most people tap a little slow," she said. "You learn to run ahead of the rhythm." "How long did that take to learn?" She looked up. People did not usually ask the operational questions. They asked whether the message had gone through, or whether she was sure, or occasionally whether she needed a man to check her work, which she did not, and had never done, but which came up with a frequency she had stopped finding surprising. "About 6 months," she said, "to get ahead of average speed, longer to get comfortable with high volume." "What's high volume?" he said. She told him. He asked a follow-up question that demonstrated he had actually understood her answer rather than simply waiting for her to finish. She answered it. He asked another. It was, she realized somewhere in the middle of it, the first conversation she had had in recent memory where the other person's questions were actually about the subject rather than about managing the impression they were making. He bought a small sheaf of blank telegraph forms he clearly did not need, said good afternoon, and left. The town of Harlan's Crossing noticed, because Harlan's Crossing noticed everything, and because a stranger paying repeated visits to the telegraph office when his volume of messages did not seem to warrant them, was the kind of detail that a town like this collected and processed, with the interest of people who have limited raw material for their social observations. By the end of the first week, it was remarked upon at the dry goods store. By the end of the second week, it was remarked upon at the church. By the end of the third week, Martin Ackley, who managed the hotel where Reeve was staying and who considered himself a person of practical goodwill, had a conversation with Reeve at the front desk that was designed to be helpful. "Fine woman, Nell Voss," Martin said, with the careful tone of someone approaching a subject from the side. "Sharp as a tack. Nobody better with that equipment." He paused. "She can be difficult, though. She's got very fixed ideas about how things ought to be done. Douglas Partridge, you may have heard the name. Good family out of Helena, he found her. Well," Martin searched for the word. "A lot," he said finally. "Most men find her a lot." Reeve was looking at the key in his hand. He set it on the desk. "Martin," he said, "I appreciate what you're doing." Martin blinked. "I'm just saying, I know what you're saying," Reeve said, not unkindly. "I've had 11 years of going into new towns and meeting the person who actually runs the communications and keeps everything working, and that person is almost never the one the town talks about like they're easy to deal with. In my experience, the ones who are easy to deal with usually aren't running anything." He picked up his key. "Miss Voss knows her equipment, and she knows this territory's wire traffic better than anyone. That's what I need." Martin thought about this. "She turned down a good man," he said, not quite letting it go. "She turned down a man who wanted her to be less than she was," Reeve said. "That's not the same thing." He went upstairs. Martin stood at the desk for a moment. Then he went to find his wife, because this seemed like something worth reporting. It was a Thursday afternoon in early October, 3 weeks after Reeve's arrival, when Nell came out of the back room from repairing a ground fault in the secondary line to find Reeve Callender sitting in the chair by the front window, which was not where clients sat. Clients stood at the counter. "The counter is there," she said, gesturing. "I know," he said. He had a notebook open on his knee and was writing something, but he closed it when she came in. "I finished my transmissions an hour ago. I came back." She looked at him. For what? He considered this with the deliberateness of someone who doesn't answer questions before they're sure of the answer. "To tell you something," he said. She waited. "Continental's regional manager sent a wire this morning," he said. "He wants to reassign your office to a bigger operation in Missoula, consolidate the relay stations, run a mail operator out of here part-time instead." He paused. "I thought you should know before it becomes official." The information landed in Nell's chest like something cold. She kept her face still. She was good at that. "Why are you telling me?" she said. "Because it's your operation," he said. "And you deserve to know what's being discussed about it." He looked at her directly. "And because I think it's wrong. Not personally. Professionally. This relay position handles more critical freight routing than Missoula would give it credit for. Losing a full-time qualified operator here creates gaps in coverage that will cost the company more than the consolidation saves." "You sound very certain about that," she said. "I am," he said. "I've looked at the traffic logs. I asked to see them last week. You keep meticulous records." He paused. "You may have noticed I don't say things I'm not certain about." She had, in fact, noticed this. It was one of the things that made him different from most people who came through the door, and she had been trying not to examine it too closely, for reasons she was not yet prepared to name. "What are you going to do about it?" she said. "I'm going to put it in my survey report," he said. "The infrastructure assessment includes communication infrastructure. I'll note that the Harlan's Crossing relay station is currently operating at a level of efficiency that recommends retention of full-time specialized personnel." He met her eyes. "I'll make sure the language is specific enough that it can't be ignored." She looked at him for a long moment. Outside, the September light was going gold over the main street, and the telegraph equipment hummed its faint, constant hum, and the room was quiet in the way that rooms are when something has shifted in them. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "No," he said. "I didn't." She looked at the window, then back at him. "Walk with me," she said. "I close at 6. The creek road is passable in this weather if you don't mind the mud." He said he didn't mind the mud. He looked like a man who had never minded mud in his life. They walked the creek road in the early Montana evening. The aspens turned gold along the water, and the first cold coming down from the mountains in a way that made the air sharp and clean and tasting of pine and distance. Nell had put on her coat, a dark brown wool with brass buttons that she had bought for function, and which suited her in the unself-conscious way of things, chosen without reference to anyone else's opinion. She told him about the telegraph work, the routing crisis she had managed at 2 in the morning 2 winters ago when the Bozeman agent had been frantic on the wire, and she had walked him through it step by careful step. She told him about teaching herself the repair work, and the first time she had opened up a transmitter casing and found that it made sense to her in a way that felt like recognition rather than learning. He listened the way he did everything with the full attention of a man who is genuinely interested in what he is hearing, rather than waiting for the moment he can respond. He told her about the survey work and what it actually meant to read a landscape for a railroad line, not just the obvious grades and water crossings, but the 100 small factors that looked like nothing on a map and determined everything in practice. He told her about 11 years of moving and what it did to a person and why he had started, recently, to think about what it would mean to stop. "Why Montana specifically?" she said. The aspens moved overhead, dropping the occasional gold leaf with the unhurried certainty of things that know exactly when to let go. "The territory," he said. "And the work. And something else I hadn't quite figured out yet when I accepted the assignment." She looked at him sideways in the evening light. "That's not very precise," she said. "For a man who measures things for a living." "No," he said. "It isn't." He said it without apology or embarrassment, the way he said most things. "I'm more precise about it now." She did not ask him to elaborate. They walked a while in the particular comfortable silence of two people who have discovered that the other person's quiet has something in its substance, not just absence of noise. Then Nell said, with the directness that was simply how she was built, "People have been talking to you about me." "Yes," he said. "What do they say?" "That you're difficult," he said. "That you have fixed ideas. That Douglas Partridge found you to be a lot to manage." He paused. "That you're too much." She kept her eyes on the creek. "And I've spent 3 weeks watching you work," he said. "And I think the people saying that have confused being too much with being more than they knew how to measure." He looked at her. "Those aren't the same problem. The first one is yours. The second one is theirs." She was quiet. The creek moved over its stones and the gold light was going fast, the mountains taking it first the way they always did, and the first stars were appearing over the eastern edge of the sky, with the punctual confidence of things that know their schedule. "You don't know me that well," she said. "I know you taught yourself Morse code and electrical repair because no one was going to teach you and you needed to know," he said. "I know you kept records that let me reconstruct 3 years of freight routing from a single afternoon with your logs. I know you said no to a man who wanted you smaller and didn't second-guess yourself about it." He paused. "I know that when you explain something complicated, you don't simplify it until you're sure the other person can't handle the real version. You give people the benefit of the doubt." She stopped walking. She turned and looked at him in the last of the evening light, with the aspens golden around them, and the creek moving cold beside them, and the stars coming out overhead, with their usual indifference to the small, significant things happening below them. She looked at Reeve Callender with the full attention of a woman who has spent years being looked at wrongly, and is now, cautiously, encountering something different. "Reeve," she said. "Yes," he said. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she said. He looked at her with amber eyes that were steady and warm and entirely unperformative. "I'm telling you," he said, "that the people in this town have been measuring you wrong for a long time. They've been using the wrong instrument." He paused. "I'd like the chance to use the right one, if you'll allow it." The creek moved. The stars completed their arrival. The cold came down from the mountains in a clean wave that smelled of snow somewhere far above them. "All right," she said. Just that, 2 words. But they were the right 2 words, and they both knew it. October settled into Harlan's Crossing with the particular quality of a Montana autumn, golden and brief, and edged with the knowledge of what was coming. Nell and Reeve spent it in the way of 2 people who have stopped needing excuses. He came by the telegraph office in the mornings for his transmissions and stayed 20 minutes longer than the transmissions required. She met him twice at the hotel dining room for supper, which Harlan's Crossing noted with the attentiveness of a town that has been waiting for something to observe. On a Friday morning in late October, Reeve arrived at the telegraph office before it opened. He was standing on the step when Nell came down the street with the key in her hand, and he was holding 2 horses, his own roan gelding and a second animal, a dark bay mare of considerable quality, saddled and ready. "What is this?" Nell said. "There's a ridge 2 miles north of the survey line," he said. "I need a second opinion on something, and I want you to see it before the season closes." He looked at the mare. "Her name is Cora. She's out of the McAllister Ranch, 15.5 hands, good mountain legs. I talked to the McAllisters about her specifically." He paused. "I asked them about the right fit." Nell looked at the horse. She had not ridden in 2 years, since the incident at the Harlan's Crossing livery when she had asked for a horse for a Sunday ride, and old Pete Harcher had looked her over with the slow, public assessment of a man performing an opinion for his audience, and told her the available animals ran a little small, said with the careful smile of someone who believes cruelty is funnier when it is delivered gently. She had walked home. She had not gone back. "Reeve," she said. "I know," he said. He said it simply, without the elaborate reassurance that would have made it worse. "I heard about Harcher. I asked the McAllisters specifically because they know horses and they know what they're talking about." His expression said what he thought of Pete Harcher's performance without requiring any words. "This is different." He looked at her. "She's got the bone for it. The saddle is fitted correctly. I checked it myself this morning." He met her eyes. "Just come and look at it. That's all." Cora turned her large dark head and regarded Nell with the deep, patient eyes of an animal that has been well treated and knows what it is. There was something in the horse's stillness that was not resignation but simple confidence, the quality of a creature that is correctly placed in the world and is not troubled by it. Nell Voss was not a woman who let other people's cruelty make her decisions permanently. She put her foot in the stirrup. She swung up. Cora stood, steady and unbothered and entirely solid beneath her, taking the weight with the easy assurance of an animal that is the right size for the task and has always been. Nell sat in the saddle and felt the ground from a height she had not felt in 2 years, and the mountain air around her, and the particular sense of a thing returned that she had given up expecting. She looked down at Reeve Callender, who was looking up at her with the expression she had been coming to know. Satisfaction, and something deeper than satisfaction, steady and warm and not performing itself for anyone. "Well," she said. "Well," he said, and she was smiling. The real one. Not the professional courtesy smile she had been giving the town of Harlan's Crossing for 3 years, but the one that came from a place she didn't usually let show. "She fits," Nell said. "She does," he said. He swung up on his roan and they rode north. The ridge was worth the ride. It was a long spine of granite and pine above the survey line, and from its east-facing edge you could see the whole sweep of the territory, the valley with the creek thread through it, the railroad line coming in from the east like a seam. Harlan's Crossing, small and certain in its valley bottom, and beyond it the mountains going blue and then white and then into the sky, in layers that made the distance feel like something you could understand, rather than something that merely overwhelmed. They stopped their horses at the edge and looked at it in the late October light, the whole world below them sharp and clean and cold. "You were right," she said. "I usually am about what's worth seeing," he said. She looked at him. "That's not a quality that makes people comfortable," she said. "I know," he said. "I stopped optimizing for comfortable a long time ago." He looked at the valley. "It was taking too much energy I needed for other things." She looked at the mountains. "How is it going?" she said, lightly, almost. "The survey?" "The other thing," she said. He turned his horse so he was facing her directly, the way he did when he wanted to be precise about something. "I've been doing this work for 11 years, he said, "and I've met a lot of people in a lot of territories, and the work requires that you see things correctly. Because if you see them wrong, you put a railroad on bad ground, and everything built on it fails." He looked at her. "I have spent 3 weeks seeing you as clearly as I know how to see anything, and what I see is someone who this town has had wrong from the beginning." He paused. "The town of Harlan's Crossing has been using the wrong measure. I'd like to use the right one. For a long time, if you'll let me." The wind came off the mountains with the cold that meant snow in a week, maybe less. Below them, the valley went gold and gray in the afternoon light. The horses were still. Nell looked at Reeve Callender on his roan horse on the granite ridge, with the whole territory behind him, and his amber eyes entirely serious, and the 11 years of moving visible in his face, and something else there too, something that was done moving and knew it. The shape of the thing she had known without being able to name it. She had stopped expecting to find it in Harlan's Crossing. She had been wrong to stop expecting. "Ask me something," she said. He asked her. She said yes. They were married in December, a small ceremony because Nell had no patience for spectacle and Reeve had no interest in it. And the combination produced exactly the wedding that suited them, which meant the important thing was accomplished, and nothing unnecessary was added to it. Nell's father, a quiet man who ran the dry goods in a town 2 valleys over, and who had been watching the situation with the contained satisfaction of someone who has hoped for something through a long silence, and is now watching it resolve, sat in the front row and did not try to hold himself together when the moment came, and didn't apologize for it. Harlan's Crossing attended in full, because Harlan's Crossing always attended everything, and because there was a particular quality of interest in attending the wedding of a woman, the town had quietly written off, and a man who appeared either not to have received the town's report on the subject or to have read it and set it aside. Martin Ackley at the hotel said afterward he had seen it coming from the second week. Old Pete Harcher at the livery said nothing, which was appropriate. Douglas Partridge's name was not mentioned, he being in Helena, which was exactly where he should be. Reeve finished the survey and submitted his report in January. The report recommended approval of the Northern Spur Line. It also contained, in its infrastructure section, a detailed assessment of the Harlan's Crossing telegraph relay operation that was specific enough and precise enough and supported by 3 years of traffic data that the regional manager in Missoula read it twice before sending a WWW note that the consolidation plan was being tabled indefinitely. The recommendation for retention of full-time specialized personnel at the Harlan's Crossing station was approved without revision. Continental Railroad, acting on a secondary recommendation in the same report, named the new junction station to be built at the Northern Spur terminus. The name they chose was Voss Junction, on the grounds that the survey report had cited, which was that the relay traffic coordination that had made the spur line viable traced directly to the Harlan's Crossing operators' management of the regional grid. Reeve had written that section carefully and had not mentioned to Nell that he was writing it. She found out the way the town found out, when the official notice came down the wire in February on a Tuesday afternoon, and she read it off her own equipment in her own office with her own hands, and sat very still for a moment, and then sent a transmission to Reeve out at the new survey camp that said only, "I see what you did." He sent back, "I wrote what was accurate." She sent, "Thank you." He sent, "Come to dinner and tell me in person." She closed the office at 6 and went to dinner. Reeve Callender surveyed 3 more territories for Continental Railroad over the years that followed, but he did all of it from Harlan's Crossing, which had a good telegraph office and a foreman's house he had built on the east edge of town, and a wife who was home when he came back from the field, which was the thing that made coming back from the field something he looked forward to, in a way he had not looked forward to anything in 11 years of moving. Nell ran the Voss Junction Relay Station, which was what the Harlan's Crossing office was officially called now, and she ran it the way she had always run it, which was correctly, and without reference to the opinions of people who didn't understand the equipment. She trained 2 apprentice operators in the years that followed, both of them young women who had been told by various people that telegraph work was not particularly suited to them, and she taught them from the same manual she had ordered from Chicago, and from 11 years of her own accumulated knowledge, which was more than the manual contained. The town of Harlan's Crossing revised its opinion of Nell Voss calendar the way that small towns always revise their opinions of people they have gotten wrong without announcement, without acknowledgement that a revision was occurring, simply by the slow replacement of one set of remarks with another. She had been too much and too sharp and too certain. She became, in the new accounting, simply capable, reliable, an asset to the town, someone Harlan's Crossing was proud to have. She had been all of those things from the beginning, of course, but it had taken someone with the right instrument to measure her correctly, and someone willing to put the measurement in writing where it couldn't be ignored, which was, in the end, exactly right. As she had always been. Sometimes the world gets your measure wrong, and there is nothing you can do to correct it from the inside. No amount of competence, no record kept, no crisis managed at 2 in the morning will change a town that has already decided. What changes things is one person who looks at you with the right instrument. Keep doing the work. The right eyes will find you. A small note for you. This story was imagined and written by AI, shared here purely for your enjoyment, and to leave you with a little something worth carrying into your day.